I'd like to invite our next keynote speaker, Bede Fennell, who's the Executive Travel Manager, Corporate Affairs, Government Industry and Tourism Australia from Tourism Australia. Please welcome Bede, driving back international demand from Tourism Australia. Please welcome Tourism Australia. Thank you.
Hi everyone. First of all, I'd like just to acknowledge that we're on Gadigal land today and pay my respect to elders past and present. And also, I guess off the back of NAIDOC Week, at Tourism Australia, we're always mindful of how important, increasingly important, the Indigenous story is to our story as we tell it right around the world, and also the role that we play as an industry in advancing the reconciliation cause. So today I was just going to give a bit of an update on where recovery is at. Luckily, I'm consistent with Kevin, so that was good. A little bit about what's influencing that recovery, what we're doing at Tourism Australia, and a couple of trends. Okay, so just a reminder who Tourism Australia is. We Australia's national tourism organisation. We are focused just on international now. During the pandemic, we stepped back into the domestic market, but we're focused on these 15 markets, the star markets, the UK, the US and China. There's still, this a list that we prosecute often, they're still the top markets for us. And our job is essentially just to drive tourism demand back down under. And also at events like this, it's always really important to just remind how important the tourism sector is to the Australian economy. 9.5 million visitors. Pre-pandemic, we're almost back there, and pre-pandemic it was 1 in 13 jobs. It's currently sitting at around 1 in 24. And the overall international arrivals back to Australia, we're sitting at about 90%. We expect to get back to that by the end of this calendar year. I think other projections are sort of next year. We're mindful that at an aggregate level, it is continuing to grow. It's been plateauing a little bit of late, but we're still confident based on forward bookings and other data points that we're going to get there this year. Good, because that's obviously we get back to a starting position for the industry. Even better that we can stop talking about 2019 as a reference point once and for all. And a bit of context on how we're going in, I guess, comparison to our direct competitors. So these are the markets that, when we test with our core markets, who are our competitors, and where their recovery is at, we're sort of in the same ballpark, which is, I think, good context for us to know. But if we want to have a look at arrivals into Australia split by market, this is sort of a nice viewpoint, and I think some call-outs here. Kevin just talked about the China market. Look, it is coming back. I know there's a bit of concern across industry. Is it coming back fast enough? Will it come back soon enough? One thing I think that's really important to remember is that China opened a year later than everybody else. And what we're seeing with markets coming back, there's just a pattern. They come back, there's this burst of VFR, then that settles down, and then we get into a cycle. But from everything we are seeing in terms of data points and of all our partners on the ground in China, and presentations like Trip.com, where the Chinese market is starting to venture out long haul, and when they venture out, we're still one of the preferred destinations. Some other interesting ones in that chart, I think, are markets like India and South Korea. Shows what can happen if aviation capacity is increased. Visitors will follow. And a market down here that we're really focused on in terms of recovery is markets like Japan. We still think there's room to grow with the Japanese market. They're just cautious travellers. They are starting to come back, and we're getting good feedback from our partners in Japan on that front. So that was numbers arrival. In terms of spend, and this I think is consistent with what has been said earlier, spend is up. So people are coming, they're staying longer, they're dispersing a bit more, they're spending more on experiences and hopefully more on accommodation as well. So we've already exceeded 2019 levels for spend just recently. So I think there's still a good story that as these travellers come back, they're the high-yielding travellers that we really want to see. So in terms of the factors influencing this recovery, obviously one of the key things is consistently seeing holiday or leisure travellers exceeding VFR. And we've seen now a couple of months where the gap is staying consistent. Now that China's been open a little bit more, we expect that gap to keep growing, and that is key, I think, to the recovery of the sector, tourism more broadly, but also the accommodation sector as well. And as important to that is the return of aviation capacity. So we're sort of sitting back at about 100%. I think now capacity is back. It's back in slightly, some of the routes are still sort of moving around a little bit. They're not all the same routes back. And one of the things that we are hearing consistently, as I'm sure you are, from our partners overseas, is that pricing is a real issue, not only international pricing, but domestic pricing on the ground. So we had a ATE conference earlier in the year, and some of the premium bookers and partners overseas were saying to us, look, we can get the people there, but they're balking at travelling around the country because the domestic pricing is too much. So that's something I think as an industry we really need to be focused on. And look, here's just a split of international capacity by destination, and what you can see is it's coming back pretty much as expected. I think we're still hoping for a bit more flights into places, well, not direct, but getting people to Uluru and Central Australia, but also Cairns are areas that still need help to really lift and come back to 2019 levels. So just a little bit, I've just pulled out some insights around the outlook. And look, we do a regular consumer demand project, a regular dip into our core 15 markets. And this is sort of, if you look at the global list, it's sort of from top to bottom. These are the sort of what our travellers are looking for when they come to Australia in terms of experiences. So, I mean, post-pandemic, there's a real lift for wide open spaces and dispersing into the region, but there's no surprises here. Our wildlife, our flora and fauna, our beaches are still key, but moving to the top is food and wine as an offering, and that's something at Tourism Australia we are starting to dial up more. We can see that consumers from these markets, this is really important to them in determining where they go and choosing a destination, so something that we will be definitely increasing our focus on. Down the bottom, you can see that wellness is starting to come in as well. Once again, that's more and more as we ask consumers, what are you looking for? That's something as well. And what we're seeing in Australia is a lot of hotels, a lot of destinations are really starting to dial up a focus in that space as well. I mean, I know in Melbourne, they've sort of started the wellness trails and the bathing trails, and that's getting a lot of good feedback internationally as well. And one of the good things that we find, so this slide sort of looks at the blue and then on the left and then the non-visitor, and it just means we exceed expectations on all fronts after someone's come to Australia. So one of the key challenges I think we all have as a sector is to get that word of mouth happening. But the two that I think we are really pleased with is value for money. We are a premium destination, but people come here, they pay more to come here. First of all, they've got to get over the cost of booking and flying, but then staying as well. But they see Australia as value for money. And one of the things that we get asked by a lot of smaller hoteliers and operators is, should we be cutting our price to get people to come? And the data is saying no. I mean, people think when they get here, we are good value. We're hearing a lot from, particularly out of the US market, a lot of the premium travels think our premium offer is good value when you compare it internationally. So I think that's a really important message for the industry. And also, I touched on food and wine. Once again, there is a big lift. People come here not necessarily expecting that we will exceed expectations on that front. And as we know, particularly for markets like the Indian market, the Chinese market, it's really important that we have the right food and wine offering available when they get here, and more we do, and more it's coming through in the research as people choose to come to a destination. Now, look, I just thought I'd pull this one out. This is just projections for growth. So as we get closer to exceeding pre-pandemic levels, TRA forecasts are showing here when we're going to exceed it and how it is going to grow beyond that. And you can see the split between domestic spend and international spend. So Australians are great travellers. That's part of the nice dynamic and the appeal for international tourists to come to Australia, is that's part of our DNA. I guess the challenge for us as a country is that so many Australians travel overseas. There's a big gap there that we need to fill to keep growing the sector. But one of the interesting things for us, and which is why the government has us focused internationally, is we will see how things are going to recover. But if for growth beyond 2019 levels, the international sector is just going to grow at a higher percentage in an ongoing basis than the domestic market. Obviously, the volume is there for the domestic, but there's a real need to focus on the international market. And one of the challenges or opportunities we're seeing more broadly across the sector is there's been a bit of reliance on the domestic market through the pandemic because it's there, it's strong, and it's filling the beds. But as the world opens up, airfare prices come down, Australians are travelling more and more. So for organisations and properties to really grow moving forward, we think it's important to focus on the international market as well. And I guess one of the things we've started talking about, and I know there's a lot of talk across the sector, is as we hit that point where we're back to recovery or we've recovered, there's a conversation starting about what does sustainable growth mean for us as a country, and that's something I think we're keen to explore across the sector. A lot of other countries are really there in terms of sustainable growth, and it doesn't just mean the environment, but it's what sort of traveller do we want to grow as a country. And look, I was just going to play a short video. We have been talking to industry about what they think sustainable growth means as we hit that point. So I might just play that video.
Sustainable growth, I mean, it's a few things actually. So yes, there is the sustainability element to it, which is a key pillar, the environmental aspect. There's also the social aspect, so making sure that where we promote tourism and promote growth from a tourism perspective, that it can be done in a way that's good for the social environment, the social fabric, as well as the industry itself. And then there's the economic benefits as well that need to come with that. So when you put the three together and you have a nice balanced approach to that, I think that creates a really sustainable growth of our tourism industry in the country.
I think sustainable growth is making sure you're not just having growth for growth's sake. So it's about having growth into the economy when you're looking at a destination, making sure those tourism dollars are being realised, but also making sure that we're working in harmony with community and industry. So it needs to be more than just one-dimensional when we're looking at growth.
Sustainable growth to me is obviously having a sustainable business moving forward, but also sustaining the environment, especially our Aboriginal culture. So the sustainability of that through tourism is really important to us. It's a really good vehicle for sharing the culture and keeping it alive.
You certainly need to look after the wonderful environments that we do have. I mean, Australia is known for its natural beauty, and it's only beautiful if you look after it.
So one of the things I think across the sector internationally, there's definitely a focus on. Something that at Tourism Australia we are currently looking at is, New Zealand has a Tiaki promise, other destinations have a version of that, and what is Australia's version of that? And that's something I think we're looking forward to talking over the next 6 to 12 months to industry to develop something to that front. And look, I mean, on our website we have a million slides on sustainability, but I thought this was an interesting one just in terms of we've asked our key markets, like in terms of sustainability, what are the important parts? And it's every part of the journey, but also accommodation. And I know that the accommodation sector, a lot of work is going into this space as well. So look, I thought I just might quickly touch on what we're doing at Tourism Australia and what our focus is to keep driving that international demand. And essentially, I guess our first pillar is our Come and Say G'day campaign. We launched that 2 years ago. We launched it about a year ago in China. And that's got Ruby the Roo, Come and Say G'day. It's shamelessly leaning into our icons because, as I'm sure you've heard, at this point in time, the marketing environment is just heavily cluttered. So we're standing out with what people know and love about Australia, and then underneath that telling the more detailed story about the offerings below that, but also working with our partners to convert that demand once we get them into the funnel. The second one is just destination awareness, and that's something we've dialed up post-pandemic through our Fennell's program. So we do a lot of work flying in media and travel agents from right around the world to see firsthand what's on offer, then write stories that then create a buzz and PR around the world. And we've now got 30,000 Aussie specialists so we have a training program internationally about Australia, and what we find is once we get them here, put them on a Fennell and train them, then they're more likely to sell an Australian holiday. Being a platform for industry, we have lots of events in ATE in Australia to connect buyers and sellers, but lots of marketplace events around the world. This year we've got coming up Japan, India, next year the US and the UK, where Australian industry can go to the countries and connect really easily and efficiently with people that are selling Australian holidays overseas. We're focused in weaving into our campaigns Indigenous sustainability and accessible tourism. So not only are they the right thing to do in many cases, what we're seeing is that consumer demand is shifting that way. Is it enough to pay more for or just book a holiday on? Not yet, but what you will see in all of our work is that all of these elements are part of the marketing campaign work that we do. And look, you can't talk about what we do in the visitor economy without talking about business events. As the business events team at T8 tell me, if business events was a country, it would be second to China. So that is a sector that's bounced back really quickly post-pandemic, and one that is particularly relevant to a lot of people in this room. But what we're seeing more and more is the business events sector is coming to a destination and then spinning off and taking other holidays, or going back, having exceeded expectations and telling Australia's story to the world. So yes, obviously we're spearheaded at the moment by Come and Say G'day and Ruby the Roo, but some of the things underneath that, which we're focused on, I think, is our partnership work. So trying to really leverage and convert the attention that we have. So our job is to get people to think and dream about an Australian holiday, and then with our partners, it's to convert that dreaming to an actual booking. We're focused more and more on high-yielding travellers, so that's not necessarily the premium sector, but that's people who will spend a higher proportion of their disposable income on travel. So we've just run a campaign that's there, Work and Play the Aussie Way. There are more working holiday makers than ever coming to Australia, but what they do, they're the perfect traveller. They come, they work, they contribute to the industry, but also they pretty much spend everything they earn here and they disperse to the regions. So premium travellers are obviously fantastic, but working holiday makers are a sector we're really focused on. And culture and events, in the lead up to the Olympics, the Decade of Green and Gold, we are really focused on leveraging the opportunity that is coming our way. And the job at Tourism Australia is to really leverage that moment when the world's eyes are going to be on our country and on our products, is to be ready, and in the lead up to that, really spotlighting our country through that work as well. And once again, look, it's supported by a breadth of activities. A shout out there, I think, to our social media platforms. We're almost at 20 million followers on our socials. So out of all the world's NTOs, we have the highest number of followers, and more, travellers, people just basically do all their research on the palm of their hands on social platforms. And I know that that's something that probably all of you in this room know, but this social commerce as a way of booking a holiday is getting stronger and stronger, and is I guess a real game changer in the distribution network as well, is that people are now booking on TikTok. They're going and just constantly researching, and that's something that we are following really closely, as I'm sure all of you are. And once again, a focus from our perspective on the airlines. I think getting capacity into the country and seeing pricing come down is key to us. So continuing to work with the key markets that we want the travellers here, partnering with those airlines to get them. So look, just to wrap up, just in terms of a couple of points for what's next. One of the things we're always keen to talk about at Tourism Australia is the new product that's coming. And as you can see here, since 2020, 236 new hotels and 22,000 rooms. It's a story that we keep telling to the world. Our product offering in the accommodation space is key. It's so competitive out there. The accommodation space, but also products and experiences and destinations as well. So that's something we are tracking, and there is high interest in what's new or what's been refreshed from our overseas partners. And finally, if I can just go back one. Just some focal points for the year ahead for us as we look forward. I think the first one is Indigenous culture. You know, our job is to tell the breadth of Indigenous culture. It's something that pre-pandemic wasn't really on the radar of our international guests, but more and more there's interest, particularly from markets like the Chinese market, in what cultural offerings do you have. Premium being redefined. So people, what our high-yielding travellers want is not just a five-star hotel. They want an experience around it. They want some adventure, something bespoke, or a wellness product. Distribution. The landscape is changing, which you would probably know better than me. So we're about to release a report in the next couple of months to sort of outline what we think the distribution landscape is going to look like in the next sort of 5 to 10 years. What's changing? Are people booking direct? Are they booking with hotels? Are they booking online? All of that to say that agents are still going to be a critical part of the distribution network. So more to come from us on that front. Agritourism, we're launching an agritourism collective to market agritourism products. We really think there's an opportunity to dial that up for Australia as well. Storytelling, I mentioned that with social commerce. You know, people constantly look at their phones, particularly younger travellers, and that's something that we're leaning more and more into as we tell our story to the world. And finally, just modes of travel and dispersal. So there's been a big uptick post-pandemic in cruise, but also self-drive. So I guess that's good from a dispersal point of view as well. So that's a bit of a whistle-stop tour. Thank you for your time, but please, if you'd like more information on any of this, reach out to the team at Tourism Australia or go to our website, and we share all of our data and insights by market as well. So thank you. There you go. I'll give you that one.